There we go.
Here we go. Well, good evening, everyone, or good morning, wherever you may be, and welcome to our podcast that is called The Void, with myself, Chris Styli, and
Tom Moisey, and it's a pleasure for me to be here this evening. I travelled to beautiful Woodley, and hope you all enjoy it. Yeah.
Definitely. Maybe I point out as the top, it's regularly in the top 10 safest places to live in the UK. I'd also like to point out we've gone through lots of effort to set up this podcast.
Do you think you make it safe?
Probably not, but let's not say that too much. Anyway, moving on. So I work in higher education and bits of education, and Tom's a bit of a financial guru, believe it or not.
Financial analyst for export and trade finance.
Yeah, as he builds his dream to become a master of the world.
Expanding slowly but surely.
Yeah. And I climb the greasy ladder to hopefully one day taking charge of this country. Pipe dreams.
Starting from zero, or where do you think you are on the ladder at the moment?
Around about 2%.
2%.
But after a few more pints, a bit more wine, we'll put up to about 5%, 10%.
Okay, good. All right. Well, I guess that today we have particular subjects to talk about. Where do you want to start, Mr. Styli?
I guess we can only start in one place. And that is, of course, with Brexit, which is going so swimmingly well.
Okay, so have you looked at the news today then?
That I have. I hope you've checked the news too, Mr. Moisey.
Yeah, so it looks like no deal is being pushed in terms of preparation for no deal Brexit. But I believe I believe since 3 months, 4 months, that there will be another referendum.
Ooh.
If that will actually change anything, I kind of think now that there might be another referendum, and then people against will just be like best of three, and it will just not lead us anywhere and just end up in no deal Brexit. But I do think there will be another referendum.
Ooh.
What do you think's going to happen?
I think I don't know if I necessarily see another referendum happening or it being one of the most likely state of affairs. I mean, it's interesting actually. There's been talk of two kinds of referendums. One of which would be a sort of more in or out one. One which apparently May is thinking about is one where people will vote more on the terms of departure. I think the problem with any referendum will come down to what the wording would be, because how would it work? Would you have May's deal or leave, or would you have May's deal, no deal, remain, etc.? What would be the wording? What would it consist of? And that's why in one way I think it might not necessarily happen, because if Parliament can't even agree on a common way out, I don't see how they're going to agree on a wording of what would be quite a controversial ballot. So it's not impossible, but
I just think it has to be in out. It can't be on the terms. Like, no one's specialised enough to vote on the terms of Brexit. I mean, the government itself isn't specialised enough to vote on the terms of Brexit, or even prepared. And
no, it's not.
So you can't really ask the people, do you think the Irish backstop should be renegotiated? Which it can't, but that's probably kind of what they would ask in this type of referendum.
Probably.
Difficult subject, yeah.
But yeah, I think they'd have to alter the wording or the options slightly on a new one. I think just doing another in or out one, it would just be too risky. You'd risk things like people boycotting it. And what would you do if Leave wins again? At that point, we still don't know what Leave looks like. So therefore, if you do another referendum, you'd have to be a little bit more specific with what exactly Leave looks like. So is this leaving with no deal? Is this leaving with or leaving with a May's deal?
Well, at the moment, there are only those two choices, and the MPs will vote in January. But if they don't agree, which is probably going to be the case, then they'll just have to go with no deal. So how would you think a no deal would work out? how many days, how many months will it take to like be able to like trade again in a fairly normal way? It'll never be obviously the same, but
yeah. I think that is really the critical question, which is no deal. Some people describe it as being a leap off the cliff edge. Other people are quite confident. The truth probably lies somewhat in between. It's worth noting that both the British government and the EU have done quite extensive planning for no deal. Unfortunately, we don't know how valid or realistic their plans actually are, because obviously they're not going to reveal them, because that would be revealing quite a big hand before they go. I know people have, however, talked about a managed no deal. Lots of Brexiteers seem to think that you could, let's just say, withhold half of the 39 billion which was promised to the EU. In return for X and X if you want some smooth transition, and then they'll get the rest of it once a trade deal is agreed. I think the truth is nobody really knows what necessarily would happen. I understand the British government's also taken quite a lot of precautionary measures, so such as stockpiling of food, which some people have been panicking about, but strikes me as being maybe one of the few wise decisions they've taken just in case this country does go over the cliff edge. But interestingly, from a financial perspective, somebody who works in financial services, does no deal actually worry you, or does it not concern you at all?
Well, I work in export finance and not really depending on exports from the UK, so I don't. If I would be doing working with export from the UK, yes, obviously that would be terrible. But since the company I work for has mainly the export countries in from China, Germany and France and US, it doesn't really matter. Well, Swedish groups are rent Sweden, but we're considered Swedish anyways, so it would worry me. The big worry I have is that the financial sector has already taken measures to move people out of the UK, either back to local offices. So, for example, one of our banks was managing our account from London, then now moving back to Stockholm for the Nordic countries. Another bank is moving to Frankfurt, one is moving back to Paris for the offices that are taking care of Nordic accounts. So it will mainly be much more local, and as we know, one of the drivers of the not really economy of the UK, but economy of London is the city and the bankers, and they're taking a toll, because obviously uncertainty has, as much as with the pound rate, has proven to be something that's frightening investors and future development.
Yeah, I think it's also probably worth us, because I think probably one of the biggest problems of Brexit is you can go into the rights and wrongs, but probably the largest problem we've had has been the fact that May's government has dealt with it fairly ineptly, shall we say, being a bit kind there. And if you look back upon it, and you go back, let's say, up until back to 2016, when David Cameron went and stepped away, I think you can identify a few critical mistakes that she made. Most definitely in terms of her overall strategy, and that it's never been entirely clear what exactly she directly wants, and when she sets out a strong position, she's then moved away from that and been, let's say, a little bit too flexible in negotiations and allowed to be pushed a little bit too easily. So, for example, I haven't really seen where the EU's given away on their red lines, but I've definitely seen where the British government's given away on their red lines, and likewise.
But that's due to the balance of power. Like, UK has less power than the EU, so it was obvious from the beginning on with a Brexit that
it is, but
it would be losing part with the EU. But the biggest problem, and I think the thing that should have negotiated immediately is to try and secure an exception of transition period before the Brexit in 2019 to start negotiating trade deals with other countries to balance that power that they would only have the EU as biggest trading partner.
But would the EU have ever allowed such a position to come around? And I think in terms of mistakes, you cannot deny that May calling an election after she triggered Article 50, and in doing so, she lost her majority. And when you lose your majority, not only do you use, if you want, the numbers in Parliament, but you also lose your authority as a leader over your own Parliament, over not only Parliament, but of course over your own party. And then above all, I think the trouble with that election is that it wasted weeks and weeks and months on achieving nothing. And that's been a tale of a premiership as well.
The achieving things, if anything. I think the reason why it's not going through Parliament is because of the snap elections.
Yes, exactly.
She did that to herself. I don't know how she didn't see that was going to happen, but anyways.
She was warned by a few MPs.
You've got to take into account that May was dealt shit set of cards in her hand when she took on the role as the leader of the UK. But her biggest mistake, I don't think you pointed out right out, is the snap election that she decided to do, which she lost her power, she lost her votes in Parliament. So what are you going to do after if you're kind of stuck in the back corner? Her only way out was to, which has then also been a mistake, I believe, is to just push through. And you said she wasn't stubborn enough, but I think now she's just too stubborn. She's too focused on
her deal. You mean?
This is my deal. Yeah, it can only be done this way.
Yeah.
Whereas I think in the way it's hard to be something else if you put yourself in her position. But she's not letting anything that might be more logical to come into that deal. You're right. I'm not sure how well she negotiated with the EU leaders.
I think that's what I mean by being stubborn. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think that's what I mean in terms of being stubborn. She's clearly a very stubborn character, and like you said, she's sticking very intensely, shall we say, to her deal, despite the fact that other and better options might be open to her. When it actually came to the negotiations, if you look at her original speech at Lancaster House, it's a world away from that. And two Brexit secretaries, who, whether or not you agree with them, have both resigned over the text, and these are the two people who'd have seen the text in depth. And particularly as the press went on, it seemed like it's a very paradoxical situation in which she seemed to want to take more and more control and be more and more stubborn with her own party and government in terms of what the final deal would look like. But at the same time, she was quite happy to give way on certain things with the EU, while also simultaneously not being clear throughout what exactly she wanted. And I just point our listeners, however few there might be at the moment, to the way of Yanis Varoufakis' book, who negotiated the Greek crisis, and in the end he resigned because he wasn't happy with what they did. But the biggest tip, which he probably gave, which is the EU, when they negotiate, they're notoriously very tough negotiators. All the trade negotiations around the world, they generally go to the wire. They're generally perceived, as I said, as being tough, very intelligent, extremely smart, and as such you yourself have to be quite intelligent, tough and smart when you're negotiating. And I don't know if she's demonstrated any of that, and therein lies quite a big problem. And if you, over the course of the 2 years, I admire her tenacity, I admire her sense of duty, but ultimately she hasn't really been up to the job, and I think that is where the major problem lies. Where we go from here, I don't know.
Someone could have done it better?
Yes.
And if so, who?
That's a good question, isn't it? I personally, I've always been a bit of sort of, you're either all in or you're all out. I think it's quite dangerous if you try and fudge it in the middle grounds in between. So I probably would have preferred not a Mog type, not an extreme Brexiteer, but at least somebody like, let's say, Dominic Raab, somebody who did vote for Brexit, clearly has ideas, to come in and lead the reins a little bit. I'm not particularly David Davis's biggest fan. I wouldn't want him as a long-term PM, but at least in the short term. Or the only Remainer I would have accepted would have been David Cameron, because he called the referendum. He, in a way, put the country in this position, and then he steps away. I understand why he wants to step down as MP, but as Prime Minister, but I don't think it says very much for him, the fact that he left as an MP as well. It felt a little bit like he felt his time as PM was coming to an organic end, and that was an opportunity to go and end it. Somebody with a bit more sense of pride would probably have stayed on and advised, because also again he tried to renegotiate Britain's membership, so it'd been useful to see what his thoughts are, but the rest is history.
I think he shouldn't have resigned, really, because he promised a referendum which I think partly enabled his re-election in
definitely
when was it
2015
was it and that was basically what got him elected, and maybe not only, but part of the reason. So if you're promising something and then being a crybaby after once it actually happens and doesn't go your way, that's very childish in a way, and it's not very it's nothing to be proud of, I think. Got to stick to your decisions. Well, at least he did he did do the referendum. So fair enough, but then you've got to be able to carry whatever way it sways.
No, I agree. And to give May a bit of credit, I know she hasn't necessarily had a huge amount of that. That is one thing I do respect, to the fact that I think she does have a bit more of a sense of duty, and she is prepared to go and fight for what she thinks being right. However, I think if you just look at the deal, it's an interesting one where it united Parliament, both Leave and Remainer, in them thinking it was unacceptable, which is quite an exceptional achievement to get Jacob Rees-Mogg and Jeremy Corbyn on the same hymn sheet. But how it goes, really, it's an interesting one actually, because if you look at the deal, it all falls down because of the backstop. If it wasn't for the backstop and there was a legal guarantee the UK could exit, it might be a different story. But I think both sides are very well aware.
Well, I think there would.
Where else would it be a problem though? With Brexiteers?
I'm not sure. There would always be a problem. There will always be a problem.
Because if you look at it, if it wasn't for the backstop, and I think the EU is again very well aware of this, the backstop is what could effectively stop this country making trade deals of its own. It would keep the UK abiding by the custom union rules, but not being able to go and set them. So if you could remove that, it's only if you want one part of the deal, but it makes a hell of a difference. And so the backstop casts a very, very long shadow of the rest of it, which is probably why the EU is only giving assurances as opposed to offering any legal guarantees, because both sides, and I think this is what Dominic Raab ran into as well, both sides ironically became aware that I think before all the negotiations started, everyone was talking about the divorce bill, blah-de-blah, and the eventual trade deal. But it was as the process continued that everyone became aware that Northern Ireland, the backstop, become the real sticking issue just because of its ability to impact everything else in and around it.
Everyone forgets about Northern Ireland.
Not that we want to offend any Northern Irish listeners out there.
No, but if you,
with the well-known sportsman,
if you could give one advice to May, or how you would like it to be played forward as of today, obviously, I think what we've been talking about is what's gone wrong and maybe what should have happened. But if you take the situation as is today, that's the only way forward is from here. So how, you wish to become a Prime Minister, what would you do? Your May resigns this evening, and then who's called upon the table? Mr. Cristiano, what do you do?
Well, thank you very much. You've made a very wise selection. I mean, first of all, I don't know if I'd actually want to be promised. I do have quite a lot of sympathy with May. Seeing herself consistently be torn apart publicly by colleagues, civil servants, the EU is not a nice job. That being said, I generally think there are two logical options out of it. One, the only majority that there's ever really been, or clear majority, is somewhat using the majority of her own party and the few Labour MPs if all compelled to vote for a reasonable-ish deal. So therefore, you have to try and get through a deal by which you go and renegotiate the backstop, try and get a legal guarantee or at least some damn strong assurances. Maybe you could, I'm not quite sure how you'd go and structure that.
How do you do that? There's only 3 months, bit more than 3 months left.
I mean, again, this is where it gets legally difficult. I think you'd want a legal guarantee, and if you don't have a legal guarantee, maybe you could have a situation where, okay, you don't get all of the divorce payments until we have a new trade deal which would go and replace the backstop. If you can't get that, and therefore you're probably not going to get the deal through Parliament, I don't like the idea of another referendum. I think it's too messy. The impact upon this country's democracy could be quite severe. I think it would set up quite a lot of bitter issues, so I'd probably look to extend Article 50 and then try to come to some sort of sensible, managed no deal. I think there are different kinds of no deals, and I think there's a big difference between one where we're very contentious and going at each other's throats, and one where maybe we recognise that we can't come up. And the third option would be, it's interesting, people have proposed, okay, is there another way forward, such as I do apologise to our audience, is there another way forward? So for example, people have often spoken about a Canada option. Again, if you look at part of the way May's gone for it, it's almost like she wanted this really close relationship, fine, but then if you have a really close relationship, that then impedes on your own ability to do other trade deals. So why not go for a bit more of a halfway house and look at that sort of option. So I think those are the three options. One, you have to get your deal through. However, if you can't get your deal through, it might be wiser to go and extend Article 50 temporarily and try and get a new kind of trade deal, a looser eye-hand arrangement. If you can't do that, both sides sensibly shake hands and you try and make sure that if it's going to be a no deal, you damn well manage it well. That's probably what I would seek to do anyway. But like I said, it's not bloody easy, is it? And if I was to reverse it back, we've made a shock decision. We put a Frenchman in charge, Mr. Moisey. What would you do?
I agree on the point of, the EU is a hard negotiator, and I think the only way is to go hard against. So I think the point of going with the legal binding or some legal binding for the backstop to either be dropped after a certain amount of time or maybe to completely wipe it away somehow, with the simple power of it's that or no deal, and really prepare yourself well to a no deal, where you could go the next day, okay, boom, we're doing this with Canada, for example, and there we go, like fuck your potatoes, we're having maple syrup.
Screw you, man. I think I largely agree with that. It's also worth noting that if you look at all the EU's negotiations, as I said, they generally always go down to the last minute, and they're tough negotiators. So just because they say now they're not going to renegotiate at all doesn't actually mean when push comes to shove and that clock starts ticking that they wouldn't necessarily renegotiate. It is if you want, and I know it sounds cruel saying it given all the fallout, but it is a game of brinksmanship, and that's what it was with Greece. For example, even when they were doing a trade deal with Canada, it was exactly the same. They generally go down to war, and you have to be tough. So it's a good thing we've got Theresa May in charge. Sorry, Theresa.
Oh, she's tough with herself, isn't she?
Yeah.
But okay, I think it's
time to move on
to end this part.
Yeah.
Part one.
Part one's over.
Okay.
Cool.